I want to talk a little bit more about Southeast Asia's country of Laos. I've talked about it in the past. It is a landlocked country. It borders Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and also China. And I've talked about it in the past because of China's extensive infrastructure drive in the country. They are building highways, railways now, and dams, and this has really lifted Laos up. Is an extremely impoverished country, is one of the poorest countries in Southeast Asia, and thanks to China's investments and their infrastructure drive, that is changing. It's already changing for the better. The China-Laos high-speed railway has only been in operation since December, and there are already people benefiting from it, not just in Laos, but also here in Thailand, where the Thai section of the high-speed rail line has not been completed yet. It's still under construction. I wanted to talk a little bit about U.S. interference there. You don't hear much about it because it has not been very successful at all. Most of the opposition lives abroad in neighboring Thailand and also just right in the United States itself. And you're going to see a lot more of this more and more often as Asia rises and as they have the ability to crack down on foreign interference. These opposition groups are going to shrink here in the region, and they're going to find themselves more and more often working from far abroad in the United States or from Western Europe. I want to show you this article. Laotian politician Exile arrested in Bangkok despite UNHCR card. Now, these are US-backed agitators hiding behind notions of being a political prisoner or being some sort of protected individual, when in reality, their activities represent a violation of the UN Charter. This is the United States interfering in another country's internal political affairs and using these individuals and the organizations that they belong to do it. Let's read a little bit more here. His name is Gao Mat Niwong Kukam, and he's a member of pro-democracy Free Lao group. Now, they give you absolutely no information or background about the Free Lao group. And if you look it up, you will come across an organization called Free Lao Campaign, and there's absolutely no real way to tell if these are the same organizations. The lack of transparency in the reporting regarding this arrest and this guy and the organization that he belongs to is a warning sign right from the beginning. They're deliberately omitting information to make this guy look like a victim when in fact he's guilty of a very serious crime. Even if he in his mind thinks that he's doing this with the best intentions, he is a vector for foreign interference that seeks to destroy the region, not save it in any way. And I'm going to show you just how deeply involved the US is in the so-called opposition in Laos. And I want to show you how the opposition in Laos, how they really don't exist except outside the country, how this may be a look at US-backed opposition across the entire region here in the future, the near future too. He was arrested. There's another activist who went missing, and I jumped the gun and I thought it was the guy who was missing who finally turned up and got arrested. That's not the case. I was wrong. I'll admit when I'm wrong. But they're from the same network, and this same network represents this problem that Southeast Asia has and how they're trying to solve this problem, and how the Western world is interfering and hiding behind human rights and international mechanisms to do it. And by doing so, they're undermining genuine human rights advocacy, and they're undermining terms like political prisoner by abusing it and jeopardizing genuine, real political prisoners. Now, who's coming out and defending him? It's France-based International Federation for Human Rights, FIDH. Let's go to their website and take a look. And right from the front page, they're just throwing it right in your face, whose agenda they're actually promoting. It has nothing to do with human rights. It's the US State Department's foreign policy objectives. This is what they're pushing. In Myanmar, in Syria, in Eastern Europe, this is what these sort of organizations do, and it should come as no surprise when you look at who is funding them. Our supporters: the European Commission, the government of France, Sweden, the Netherlands, Belgium. You have the Embassy of Switzerland in Thailand, the Embassy of France in Mali, Open Society Foundations, that's George Soros's organization. He is a convicted financial criminal. These other, you would say, corporate funded foundations always involved hand in hand with Western meddling. The Henrik Boll Stiftung, this is the German Green Party's version of the National Endowment for Democracy. And the National Endowment for Democracy, I don't see it listed here, but the US government is involved, and you will see the American Institute in Taiwan, that is the de facto US embassy in Taiwan, interfering in China's internal political affairs. So this organization here, the International Federation for Human Rights, it's just a front for Western governments, and it uses human rights as a smokescreen to help advance Western foreign policy objectives. Which is why when a US-backed agitator is arrested, they come out and they're the ones trying to defend him and make him look like a victim rather than someone who's been caught engaged in sedition, perhaps even treason. Now, even though there's no way to tell for sure whether this Free Lao group that he's connected to is the same as this Free Lao group, this Free Lao campaign, I just want to show you how the Free Lao campaign and other organizations linked to it, how they're all using the very same language as the Free Lao group that this arrested man, this activist, is associated with. They're all using the same language. They all have the same agenda. It's not a reach to suspect that they're all linked together. Now, I want to show you this. This is, whenever you see FARA.gov, this is the Foreign Agent Registration Act. The US government has very strict rules and regulations regarding foreign interference and foreign influence inside the United States, which is ironic because their own interference abroad would be illegal under US rules if someone else was doing it to them. And this is from 2018, and it's the United Lao Council for Peace, Freedom, and Reconstruction. And this was all of them coming together, the representatives from all sorts of groups. And if you look at the signatures on some of these documents, you will notice the Free Lao campaign is mentioned. You also have Lao People Power, Lao United for Democracy, all of these cookie cutter sounding names that the US backs in virtually every country on earth. Now, these people are all mostly based in the United States. All of these documents entail activities taking place in the US involving the US government. They are talking to people from the US State Department, members of Congress, and even the National Endowment for Democracy. They have officers meeting with the United Lao Council for Peace, Freedom, and Reconstruction. You have letters like this. Who is this to? Acting Assistant Secretary Patrick Murphy. He was involved in the US State Department's activities in Southeast Asia. This is a letter to him from this group of Laotian opposition figures. What are they talking about? He's advocating on human rights, freedom of religions, and democracy to change the current Lao communist system into democracy. And they're here in Washington, D.C., talking to the U.S. government to see how they can all make that happen, which is not democracy. Democracy is a process of self-determination. When you're involving a foreign nation in your country's internal political affairs, that is foreign interference. If you're using the word democracy, you're using it as a smokescreen for facilitating foreign interference. We've seen the US do this time and time again. It has absolutely nothing to do with democracy. They're not going to openly admit that they are overthrowing governments, subjugating entire nations, their people siphoning off their resources and running these countries into the ground. They're going to spin it as if they're doing something good for them, like promoting democracy. And so this is the opposition in Laos. They could not get any traction inside the country itself. Like I said, a lot of them are in Thailand. A lot of them are just hanging out in the United States or across Europe. And this is what they do. They just spend all day meeting with Western representatives, trying to get something going. They try to attach themselves to the US-backed anti-government and anti-monarchy protests in Thailand. And they've also tried to inject themselves into the US-backed unrest in Myanmar. And again, it's all part of the so-called Milk Tea Alliance. They tried to get some hashtag going at one point regarding Laos, but it just could not gain any traction because there is no support for this opposition inside of Laos. The government does not allow it. And even beyond their borders, they're trying to track these people down and bring them to justice because, again, they might claim that this is a human rights issue and these are just pro-democracy activists. But in actuality, they're being backed by foreign governments who have a really bad track record in the region. And if you go through Free Laos campaign Twitter timeline, this really says it all, doesn't it? On point. And the headline is, "Congratulations, world, Lao is officially a Chinese colony." And the irony here is that China is helping build Lao up in ways the West never would. They couldn't and they wouldn't. And China is already doing it. They're saying that Lao is a colony of China, but China is working with Lao. They're not dictating to Lao what they should be doing. The irony of them saying that, while at the same time you have Western governments hiding behind these fake human rights groups dictating to Southeast Asia regarding who they can and cannot arrest and under what conditions they can arrest people and detain people and send citizens of Lao back to Lao. The West is going to determine that for Southeast Asia. The West, who actually did turn many of these countries in Southeast Asia into colonies. The irony is just off the scale. And this is 2022, and they're still trying to get away with this. So we have to keep our eye on these stories. I find that these small stories that you probably won't otherwise hear, or will hear in passing and just think, oh, it's those oppressive Southeast Asian countries just arresting ordinary people, just being oppressive. Now you know the rest of the story. Now you know that Laos opposition is literally in Washington, D.C., working directly with the U.S. government for what? For regime change in Laos. It's not going to happen. And that's not because Laos is a colony of China. It's because China's rise is protecting Southeast Asia, including Laos, from this horrible legacy of colonization that the West subjected them to for generations. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing to my channel. It's free to do and it helps the channel grow. I have a website, newatlas.report. You can find and follow all of my work there. If I'm ever kicked off of YouTube, you can still go to newatlas.report and find my videos there. I will embed them there from other video sharing platforms. So find and follow all of my work there, bookmark it, please share it with others. I'm on social media for the time being, at Brian_Berletic for Twitter. I'm also on Weibo, which is Chinese social media, and you can find the links to all of these in the video description below. Also in the video description below are all of the articles and documents that I discussed in this video. There are also ways you can help support my work listed in the video description below. Starting in February, sometime in February, PayPal will not let people based in Thailand send or receive money or donations. So I have opened a Buy Me a Coffee account. You can do one-time donations or memberships through Buy Me a Coffee. You could also do memberships through Patreon, which I also have. And to everyone who has been supporting my work, whether it's month to month, one-time donations, or just helping share my work or sending news tips, thank you so much. I could not do this work without that help. So thank you. And as always, thank you for watching.